Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sports Kings podcast here on iHeartRadio. I'm your host, MeanGene Sports Machine. It is a Friday, May 15th, 2020. Can't believe we are already halfway through the month of May and things are moving along. We still have no NBA, no Major League Baseball, no professional sports at this time. And it's really sad as we continue to deal with COVID-19. And right now, May 15, we would probably be in the third round of the NBA playoffs, which is the Eastern Conference Finals, the Western Conference Finals. And I mean, we have really done well, or I won't say we have done well, but we have survived without any sports. And I hope you enjoyed my podcast I did on The Last Dance, because that's basically some of the entertainment we have had to filter in the absence of professional sports, or mainly the NBA. But I did mention to you, and I've been working with Craig Bolerjack. We had him on our SB Nation radio show a while back. And Craig Bolerjack, if you ever listen to any Utah Jazz games, then you recognize his name and his voice. He has been around for a while, and has, done a fabulous job. But one reason why we invited Craig to be on today is because, if you can recall, it was a scheduled game between the Utah Jazz and the Oklahoma City Thunder that never took place. It was canceled due to COVID-19. I mean, I don't even think we was calling it COVID-19 then. Rudy Gobert had tested positive for the coronavirus, and I guess that was made public right before the game, and the game was canceled. The game was canceled for that night, and then, as we found out days later, the NBA would go on and postpone all NBA games until further notice. So, I mean, that's where we stand right now until further notice. But anyway, we're going to talk to Craig Bolerjack and just get his thoughts and opinions on just what actually happened during that moment. I mean, could you imagine just being set up to broadcast as they do for every home and away game, and you get word that there's not going to be an NBA game, and then you find out why later. Just amazing. So I can't wait to hear his story on what took place, and to get his thoughts and opinions on what it's going to take to get the league back up and running, to get professional sports back up and running, NC2A back up and running. I mean, this thing has really impacted all of us, personally and professionally. For the workers, those stadium workers, concession stand workers, NBA support staff. I mean, there are thousands of people that support the NBA, even though you only have a couple of hundred players. But to make that whole NBA thing work, man, there's a lot of people that are out of work, and those folks are struggling. And but anyway, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, folks, we will talk with Craig Bolerjack, play-by-play announcer for the Utah Jazz. You're listening to the Sports Kings podcast here on iHeartRadio.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
And we are back, folks. Once again, you're listening to the Sports Kings podcast here on iHeartRadio with MeanGene Sports Machine. And as promised, I told you we would get him on, and he's joining us from Salt Lake City, Utah. He's the play-by-play announcer for the Utah Jazz. Please welcome to the show my friend Craig Bolerjack. How you doing, Craig?
Hey, MeanGene, I'm doing as best as I can. I'm a little antsy, I got to be honest. I want to get back to work, but I just don't know when that's going to happen.
Craig, I tell you, man, your voice is one of those that I truly miss during the NBA season because
Thank you.
I have the package, the league pass, and as I scroll through the different games, once I hear your voice, I'm like, okay, the Jazz are on the air now.
Oh, well, I tell you, it's been a couple of months, and we were in Oklahoma City that night when things shut down, and it was, I didn't realize it was going to be as dramatic, as drastic, and challenging as it has been for this country and for the world on that particular night. But, Gene, here we are. I just hope that we're making baby steps right now to get back at it.
Yeah, and I got to ask you about that, man, because it's been nearly 2 months, a little bit over 2 months since that night when the Jazz and the Thunder was supposed to take place. So, could you just kind of give me a little bit of information? I mean, just what took place? I know the game was scheduled to take place, and next thing you know,
right.
it didn't. So, what happened during those moments?
Well, it's long story short. We'd gone through pregame. Chris and Kinney, our sideline reporter, always jumps in just prior to tip-off with a couple of takes of keys of the game. And I looked over to the left. We're sitting on the floor on this particular night. Somewhere in the leagues, now they have us up. But I was glad in OKC we were sitting on the floor, and I could see a gentleman running onto the court. And we're probably, Gene, I'm telling you, 10, 15 seconds away from putting the ball in the air. And then he runs, talks to the officials. I had known that Rudy had been tested earlier in the day, but I was still thinking, I wonder if there's something wrong with the floor. Maybe something's wrong with the lights. Maybe something's wrong with the shot clock or the game clock. But I kind of realized as this conversation in front of me was continuing that this had a serious nature to it. And the PA announcer made an announcement that the game had been postponed for the moment, because of a league review. And I thought, wow, I've got a feeling this is going somewhere. We took a commercial break. We came back, and I kind of knew at that point in time that things were going to basically turn south. And then the officials brought Billy Donovan and Quinn Snyder to center court, Gene, and they had about a minute conversation. And then I was talking to a couple of players or watching them talk to me and, just kind of mouthing a few things. And he knew something was up. And then Quinn made a very quick dash to the locker room and just, waved his hand and said, "Let's go." And the guys followed him. And as soon as we got off the air, about a minute or two later, we sent it back to our regional sports network, AT&T Sports. And I got a text and said, "Come back to the locker room as soon as you can." And once I got there, they put us in a separate room from the Jazz, and boom, the door closed, and I was in quarantine. And that was just the beginning of a very long night until we were able to get tested around 12:30 in the morning and then bus to a hotel. I got the word that I was negative the following morning, and then we had several meetings. We found out that Donovan was also positive, along with Rudy, and we talked to multiple health officials. Luckily, Delta had a couple of flight attendants and pilots who were willing to bring us back to Salt Lake City late that afternoon. We were given rules of what we should do. Gene, proximity, 6 feet,
right.
Quarantine, which is what I did for like about 9 days. And then I had to take temperature and record it twice a day. And then luckily, everything turned out. My family, I stayed as far away as I could.
Right.
And it was not a fun time. And I know a lot of people have been through much worse, but just to be there on that particular night was just really surreal and a bit like I was in a sci-fi movie, to be totally honest.
Amazing, folks. Once again, we're talking with Craig Bolerjack, play-by-play announcer for the Utah Jazz and the events that took place in March with the NBA, the Utah Jazz, and Oklahoma City Thunder. So, Craig, I mean, I tell you, man, that's an amazing story, and just, I mean, and looking back on that night and knowing what you know now, I mean, did you even think for a moment that the NBA would postpone its season?
Gene, we got into this room, and luckily there was a couple of televisions, and we knew there was another game that was about to finish, and one was about to start on the West Coast. And that's when the news of the Oklahoma City Jazz game was postponed. That's when we got word while we sat there that the league had decided to shut it all down. It was pretty numbing, to be honest, because as you know, I mean, we all as fans and broadcasters, and we ride this incredible roller coaster of emotion through a 7-month season, and all of a sudden the train just stopped. And it was a hard break, by the way. And I just wasn't prepared for it in that particular way because, we were really focusing on the final 18 games of the regular season.
Right.
Right now, the Jazz, at this moment, they're still a 4 spot in the West, right in front of, strangely, the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Right.
So, it was sad because I knew the love of the game is strong, and also Vince Carter's last year, LeBron, could he actually pull it off again?
Mm-hmm.
Kawhi and the Clippers, Rudy and Donovan and Joe Ingles, and picking up Jordan Clarkson. There was a lot of hope in Utah that the Jazz could be one of those outsiders that jump in and really cause a bit of a problem in the Western Conference. So, yeah, disappointed, I think, is just the way I felt. But as time has moved on, you understand the seriousness of what's actually happened, not only in this country but around the world. And there's some good news starting to pop up. The curve is beginning to flatten in a lot of areas, not all, but some.
Right.
And that actually the league is trying to take some, like I said, baby steps to get the league back into action. How that's going to happen, MeanGene, that's going to be a huge undertaking for Adam Silver and the rest of the Board of Governors and the Players Association on how it's going to all go down. But let's hope they find a way.
Yeah, I agree, Craig. I mean, unbelievable. And the fact that the NBA actually took the lead, I think, in all of sports, being the one organization that decided to hey, we're going to step away. And next thing you know, the next big organization was the NC2A.
Right. And I called tournament games when I was at CBS for 13 years. And that's, Gene, I think that one also punched me in the gut. I'm sure it did you because, that's the time of year, whether you follow college hoop that much, and sometimes because, young players are making that quick jump, 1 year and out. And so you don't get a chance to follow a career build like it used to be. But still, my experience when I call games in regions, on that one day, everyone felt like they could be the Cinderella and win a championship. And you just knew that a lot of young players who had worked, their young lives to that point got gut punched, and there was no opportunity to see if they actually could achieve that goal. And I really feel sorry for those individuals and the non-athletes who, in high school and college who weren't able to go through the graduating process.
Right.
With cap and gown. What a great time. What a great memory it was for me. And I really feel bad that, this class of seniors, both in high school, college, did not get a chance to experience that as it should be.
You're right. Amazing. I mean, like you said, I mean, to have that taken away from you, Craig, is got to be painful. So I got to also ask you, I mean, here we are, mid-May. I think we would probably be somewhere, in the third round of the playoffs?
Yes. I would guess it'd be starting right about this week, or it just depends on how deep those first 2 rounds went. But we'd be starting to kind of figure out who's who and who's going where.
So, I mean, Craig, like you said, the commissioner, who I think has done a fabulous job handling everything and working with the fans, the players, management, you name it. But, I mean, just how does the NBA come back? I mean, in your opinion, how does that happen?
Well, a couple of people I've talked to, MeanGene, in the league, is there's a couple of different models. And I know that, part of it would be Orlando at Disney World. That may be where the Eastern Conference would be, sequestered or bubbled. and then Las Vegas would probably be where the West would go. But I think there's a lot of things to figure out. What about family? There's a lot of young players with family, and they don't want to be away for that long a period of time. Because it's about Gene? It'd be about a 2-month process unless you shorten the playoff series. But look, the NBA and most franchises are in financial hurt, and they need the income, the revenue flow from national broadcast. So I don't see them, shortening the series, because every nickel and dime is going to help go back into the pockets of the owners and the players. So how do you make sure that no one jumps the bubble or out of the bubble? And then secondly, think about the testing that has to go on, and just the logistics of really a small staff in the building, no fans, but yet you get television. And I'm guessing probably too, Gene, that it'd be a smaller. In my experience, it takes a city basically. I'm overstating, but you're 30 or 40 people on a broadcast nationally. I'm sure they're going to probably lock down 2 or 3 cameras. Maybe you have one floor guy. You may have 1 or 2 announcers. I doubt you have a sideline reporter. So they're going to cut it to the bones just for safety's sake. That's kind of the way I thought, and the way we've been talking amongst ourselves around the league. So I think they've got plans, probably plan A through Z, and they're probably chipping away at each one to see which one will work the best. And I'm anxious to see how it turns out. If they don't play, then I'm guessing they just do a reset button, and maybe the word was to debut sometime in December or make Christmas Day maybe their jumping off point for 2021.
Yeah, I can see that too. And I know that Shaquille O'Neal, who I know you have had the pleasure of meeting, he actually stated that, perhaps we should just scrap 2020 and just, let this virus run its course, or, allow time for a vaccine to come on board, and then just start with all sports, just start fresh in 2021. What do you think about that outcome?
Well, I think on paper, when you write it out, it sounds like maybe a good plan. But I think we're finding out too, Gene, that the economic impact. Yeah. I think we all understand sports is such a huge part of our society, and all the concessionaires and all the ticket takers, all the security staff around the country. I didn't, you think about. I've had too much time to think, but when you think about the cash flow of concessions and how many jerseys haven't been sold, how many beers haven't been poured, it's really phenomenal. And that's what I think is really also taking a huge, it's taking a gouge out of the revenue stream. But I think smartly you say, let's all get healthy and let's make sure that this thing can be contained. But then the other side will say, well, look, we have to dip our toe in the water sometime. And you know what, Gene, I think that's the biggest question. When is the right time? Right. Because I don't think you're going to cure it. And again, the vaccine may prevent it. But, and again, I'm no doctor, but I listen too much to television and the experts. And I'm enthralled with just the different philosophies of how to make this work. There's people suffering out there financially, and so you have to understand their plight. But boy, I tell you, sports is just a threat, isn't it? It's around our country, and the love of the game, and how many people actually miss baseball, NBA, hockey, as we get into college football and the National Football League. Boy, I don't know which way we're going, but I hope it's going on an upward swing for us.
Same here, Craig. I tell you what, man, I really, really do appreciate you taking the time to talk with us, and I'm so glad that you and your family are safe and just dealing with this. And hey, I know pretty soon I'm going to hear your voice again on my television, and I'm going to be yelling at you because you probably said something I didn't like.
Hey, Gene, you text me when we're back on, man. You text me something, and I'll try to slip a hello to you on the air. But man, I'm glad you do tune in. Big T and Matt are fun to work with, and Chris and Kenny, and I talked to them, and I think we're all in the same boat. We miss our jobs, and one thing, Gene, what I found out too is as you fatigue through a course of 100 games with preseason, regular season, and hopefully postseason games, you kind of start getting fatigued and going, man, I hope this ends. But you know what I've learned? I love what I do, and I miss it. And I think if anything comes out of it, I've kind of rejuvenated myself to say, you know what, I want to work, and I have no intention of going away anytime soon, God willing.
Hey, I hear you, Craig. Hey, man, once again, thanks for joining us here, and we look forward to hearing you back on the air.
Thank you, Gene. Talk soon. Take care.
All righty, folks. Craig Bolerjack joining us on the Sports Kings podcast, and it's always a pleasure to have him on because he is one of the best in the business when it comes to calling NBA games. We are going to take a break, and when we come back, we will actually just kind of break down some of the things that Craig mentioned here. Once again, it's the Sports Kings podcast here on iHeartRadio.
A social distancing tip.
While the CDC urges you to avoid close contact, like hugging or shaking hands, there are other non-physical ways to say hello. Wave, wink, use sign language, salute, smile, give the peace sign, throw up an air high five, do jazz hands. Remember, stay a minimum of 6 feet or 2 arms length away from others and stay home if you can. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part because we're all #alone together. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
All right, we are back, folks. Once again, it's MeanGene, the Sports Machine. You're listening to the Sports Kings podcast here on iHeartRadio. Funny thing, I don't know if you could tell throughout Craig's interview, we are having a thunderstorm here in the Houston area. So there was some moving around because as I do this show, I'm facing a window and I'm looking at lightning that is all over the place. So I didn't feel comfortable with that. So I had to move the equipment and continue on with the interview while Craig was talking. So just some of the things you have to do when you're broadcasting. But anyway, I did want to talk about some of the things that Craig had mentioned, mainly that because he's closer to the information than I am, and the fact that the league has been talking. Adam Silver has been meeting with players, not physically, but via conference call, video, WebEx, or whatever, and trying to get a feel of what's happening. Because like we said earlier, the NBA set the tone for this. 1 player, 2 players, and then we didn't even mention that several other players tested positive for the virus and have since recovered. Everyone has since recovered. There are no known active cases in the NBA, to my knowledge. But at the same time, just taking all of the precautionary steps and seeing how this is going to happen. And, there's a financial impact with this whole thing with the NBA. Some of the players that are not under contract, perhaps making those, minimum base salaries. Certainly they should be able to live off that type of money. I think the minimum salary is $1 million. But at the same time, these players sort of, look at things and it's a problem. So I think that the fact that the league is having to address the financial impact for the players and looking at their salaries, and then trying to come back and do this thing in the most safest way. Craig had mentioned, perhaps they could set up the Eastern Conference players over in Orlando and set up the Western Conference players in Las Vegas. And of course, Las Vegas is struggling with their own situation and trying to bring their economy back up. But then again, and you're talking about trying to knock off 2 months of playoffs, because the NBA, typically the playoffs run from April through June. And to have these players be away from their families for that length of time, and it's just a logistical nightmare. And we're going to continue to stay on top of it and follow it and see exactly what the NBA is going to do. But I just really applaud them for just, taking the lead on this. They did what they did. The NC2A came on, and the only bigger sports franchise out there that haven't really been impacted as much was the NFL. I mean, the NFL did the draft, and that was virtually done, and that was great. But, now you get into the time of the NFL where, okay, those draft picks need to go out and fly and meet their teams. And then there's the mini camps that happen. And then there's the training camps that would happen. So, we have a lot to see as far as, how sports is going to take place. The NFL released their schedule. They are planning full steam ahead in 2020. And I mean, as a fan of the game, I certainly want to see that. I like to see it happen. But as a fan of the game, I don't know if I'm going to go if it's not safe. I mean, to go from where we are now to 80, 90,000 people in the stands. That's yet to be seen. But anyway, from an NBA perspective, I really was glad to be able to get Craig Bolerjack on the show and talk about that moment that happened with the I think it was March 12th, March 13th, when the Jazz was to take on the Oklahoma City Thunder in Oklahoma City, and that's when this thing really blew up from a professional sports standpoint. So we are going to end this podcast. Hope you enjoyed the interview with Craig, and we'll come back next week and talk a little bit more about the NC2A, because we certainly need to know how that's going to happen. Some of the schools have announced that they would not have college kids on campuses in the fall. They're going to move to the online format. And how does that impact athletes and the NC2A, which is a huge thing for the fall. So we're going to see how that's going to go. So anyway, folks, enjoy your weekend. Be safe. Do what you need to do. Take care of your family. Take care of yourself. And be informed, whatever you do, okay? So I'm MeanGene Sports Machine. You have been listening to the Sports Kings podcast here on iHeartRadio.